Hi class, it's Dr. Maxwell DiCarlo. Sorry for the light behind me. Anyway, welcome to the week 4, can you believe it? We're halfway through this class. Week 4 edition of your video lecture. This week we're talking about person-centered therapy. Basically, Carl Rogers, who revolutionized what we know about therapy, and basically can be seen in every single therapeutic approach at this point. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to go through PCT. Here we go. All right. Again, I'm borrowing slides from Dr. Corey, who wrote our textbook. So this is straight out of our book. Okay, so person-centered therapy. This is probably what most of you have been waiting for, because it really focuses in on the therapeutic relationship. That very first week in class, when we talked about how there's more than just techniques and things like that that impact the therapeutic process and people being able to move towards their goals. This is what we were talking about. It really rests very heavily on the who as opposed to the what of who the counselor is in the therapeutic alliance. So let's just take a look at some of the very basic ideas in this, this theory about human nature. And that is that humans are trustworthy, and they are able to naturally move towards making positive, productive change. So this is very different because it's a positive, strengths-based approach that, given the right conditions, people will naturally move towards self-actualization and becoming the best version of themselves that they possibly can. They are trustworthy to be able to make those changes and move in a positive direction. It's innate in all human beings. Humans are capable of making change and living productive, effective lives. And they naturally move towards the self-actualization as long as they have the core conditions. I like to think of PCT is like taking a little pot, and if you get potting soil and you get a seed, and you put the seed into the right conditions, and you give it sunlight and water, and you don't over drench it, and you don't dry it out or kill it like I usually do with plants, given the right conditions, it will naturally grow and self-actualize, if you will, into what it was meant to be. They will naturally move towards that growth. This approach, really, to us, it seems like, well, yeah, that's what counseling is all about, right? I mean, this doesn't seem like it's rocket science, but remember, when this came out, it was being faced with the really looking at psychoanalytic approach, where the counselor was always the expert. They always knew better than the client, and they were really assessing the client and then deciding what needed to happen, and the therapist was always the one in control. So this came on the scene, and it was like, wait, hold on a second. I'm not the expert. The counselor doesn't know best. People will naturally move towards positive change if I just create this environment of growth for them. It really challenged the validity of the counselor giving advice, telling the client what was the best thing to do in the situation. Rather, we explore with the client because they're the experts on their lives, as opposed to us being the experts on their lives. One thing I'll just say about that is that oftentimes in clinical practice, I have clients who are coming in to me and they want me to tell them what to do. And so it's very challenging, because sometimes I like, just tell me what to do. You tell me what to do and I'm sure it'll work out, right? But that stunts their growth because they don't develop the skills and ability to choose the best course of action. So we don't want to do that. We don't ever want to be in that position. So PCT really does rest on the fact that we don't have to give advice or suggestions or persuade people. We don't have to diagnose or do any of those things, but rather we are getting into the boat with the client and saying, hey, I'm here with you, and let me create these conditions for which you can grow. so that the client then is able to resolve their own problems without help, right? We also sort of PCT challenge this idea that we're focusing on problems and rather that we are focusing on the person. Because if the person is given a caring environment and an empathetic environment and we have a genuine interaction, then the person is where the change is really going to occur. Let me stop for 1 second. Okay, sorry. All right, there we go. All right, so it really challenged all of these ideas that the counselor's the expert, that we need to give advice, that clients wouldn't be able to naturally progress towards solving their own problems, and then we have to focus on the deficits in order to make growth. It challenged all of those pieces. Instead, what it did was emphasize that it's really the personal characteristics, what the therapist is coming to the table with, that really helps create this growth environment for the client. And that it's really the quality of the therapeutic relationship that actually creates the change. It's, again, we're creating the environment that is then a growth promoting climate in which the client will then naturally move towards self-directed growth. And it's due to that interface with the client and the therapist that the growth happens. Okay, so 3 really important, this is what you'll have to remember about person-centered therapy, is that there's a focus on the therapist creating this growth environment. And what that growth environment means is that there is congruence. There's a genuineness and realness that the therapist is coming to the table with that not only models appropriate behavior and growth movement toward growth behavior, but also you can see that then in the client in their interaction with the client and the therapist, okay? Okay. The other piece of this is this unconditional positive regard. What that means is that we create an environment where we are accepting of the client and we show care, genuine concern about the client and what they're coming in with. So that genuine unconditional positive regard, meaning that, again, this goes back to value systems, is that I don't have to agree with your values, but I can accept you as a person and those qualities about you that kind of unite us, and I can accept those, even if I don't agree with the behavior, is that we can give the person unconditional positive regard. That has absolutely nothing to do with me agreeing with your values, okay? I can give someone this unconditional positive regard even if my value system is starkly different than theirs. I can create that environment. Accurate empathy and understanding. This is the ability to deeply grasp the subjective world of another client, or another person, I apologize. And really what that means is that it's not us just being sorry for the person and their situation and what they're going through, but really kind of stepping in their shoes and understanding what they are experiencing. I want to share a really quick little video that I absolutely love with you. Let's see here. I just have to find it because I have it all linked for you. Let us see here. Brene Brown. Oop. Move this down. Here it is. Brene Brown. One of my favorite videos of all time. Here it goes.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy is very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy: perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth, staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice. In order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, is an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, we'll stop that. I love that video. I think it just really highlights the importance of empathy and the difference between empathy and sympathy. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm going to find, okay, so when we're talking about this growth promoting climate, it really means that the therapist is coming into the situation providing unconditional positive regard, genuineness, and accurate empathy and understanding. Oh, here we go. So there are 6 core conditions that Rogers really sort of presented, and they are these. You'll hear this terminology that they're necessary and sufficient for personality change to occur. Much of the research now, as far as like CBT and some of these postmodernistic approaches, will say that they are necessary but not sufficient. I.e. we need other techniques and things like that. But for now, we're going to go with that it's necessary and sufficient, because that's really what Rogers believed, is that what we need to be successful in therapy are these 6 things. The first one is that 2 people are coming into psychological contact. So we're having an experience. We're getting on a journey together where we are having an experience. The client, one person in that experience, is experiencing incongruence between who they want to be and who they are. And so there's this sort of friction that is going on. The other person in this experience, i.e. the therapist, is congruent and integrated into the relationship. They are genuine, they're congruent, they're present, they show empathy, and that is the therapist role. So we've got 2 people in the relationship. One is in a state of incongruence, one is in a state of congruence, and it's almost as if in this interaction then creating this sort of soil, if you will, to be able to grow, this growth environment, that the therapist is modeling modeling appropriate behavior and modeling this growth and movement towards self-actualization. Does that mean that the therapist has to have it all together? No. Again, the requirements are not that the therapist have it all together and that their life is perfect and they never have conflict and they always respond perfectly in every situation, in every relationship, but rather that they are genuine and empathetic and congruent. All right, so the therapist experiences an unconditional positive regard and real caring for the client, right? That goes back to those first three. They show empathy for the client, and they communicate this empathy to the client, so that the client knows that they are being cared for in an empathetic, genuine way. Okay. Whoops. It doesn't want to change slides. Okay. Um, so this therapy really focuses on the quality of the therapeutic relationship. I already said that. Engages in this idea that it's not the therapist who's the expert who's going to make an assessment and a diagnosis and then tell the client what's wrong with them and how they can improve the situation in some way, but rather that there's a co-assessment. Like, you're working together with the client. You're not the expert, but rather you are, again, journeying with the client to help them through this process. That we're providing this supportive therapeutic environment where that really is sort of the pivotal catalyst for change and healing. And that we as a therapist, and here's the most important piece, I think, is that we're modeling that all of us humans struggle. It's a little bit from existential, right? We all struggle. We all have anxiety. We all have, the natural transitions that happen in life that we can get hung up on. We all experience those. So we are genuine and real with our clients. You will find that there is a lot more freedom for self-disclosure in this particular model because we're being genuine. Like, wow, like, oh, I can understand your experience. That must be really hard. Or I don't understand exactly your experience, but I can identify with the pain that you're feeling. And so we're providing that sort of more open, more real, more genuine interaction with our clients. That does not mean that we can just self-disclose all over the place. Remember, we're not a hairdresser where we're, just having a verbal vomit session. We are still maintaining that we are a therapist and trying to create a therapeutic environment, but we also have a little bit more freedom to just be real with our clients and authentic. We can openly express our feelings and attitudes that we're having in the therapeutic relationship. So if a client says something and that pulls up an emotion for us, we can identify that and say what that is. An example of that, I think I've spoken about this client before, a young woman with bipolar, and she came in and she was just crying about how frustrated she was in her situation and with her diagnosis and the symptoms that she experienced. And there was such a deep hurt that she was experiencing. And as she was crying, I could feel myself starting to have an emotional reaction. And I actually started crying just a little bit because I could feel the pain and the hurt that she was experiencing. And the session wasn't about me, but what it was that I was able to say, wow, like I can feel the pain that you're experiencing, and it's actually getting me to I'm experiencing. I can see the pain that you're having, and how devastating this is for you. And so we were able to connect on an emotional level that way. To let her know that I'm human. I'm not going to sit there straight-faced and be blank slate, right? While I'm watching her express such deep, deep devastation and hurt. Let's see here. In person-centered therapy, we also are very invested in developing our own experience of moving towards our own self-actualization and knowledge. So trust me, when you get in a therapeutic interaction with someone, we have to be genuine, and the clients are going to know if I'm preaching to them or I'm saying to them, oh, well, you should use this technique to manage your anxiety. But yet I am presenting as a very highly anxious person. They're going to know that. They're going to look at you and be like, yeah, I don't think you really can help me with that. So we don't, again, have to be perfect, but we do need to be attending to our own needs so that we can then help others from a place of being genuine. Okay. One of the ways that this model has been used across the board is with crisis intervention, probably because it's not about techniques that may or may not work when someone's in true crisis, but rather it's about coming alongside them, letting them know that they can express themselves, that there's no judgment, that we are trying to create this warmth that we, this genuine warmth and caring for that person, and that we don't have an agenda, right? They can just be where they're at. And sometimes, and I like to think of it this way, we've talked a little bit about acceptance and commitment therapy, but when you stop resisting what you're experiencing and just give in, oftentimes it lacks the power to continue to control our behavior. And I feel like this is a little bit like that too, is that when I step into the boat with you and say, hey, I'll go on this journey with you, I'm here. I don't have to be an expert. I might not be able to tell you, like, here's the magic bullet, this is what you should do. But I'm willing to be in the boat with you and allow you the space to talk about what you need to, or bring things up and know that you're not going to be judged. That right there is creating this amazing therapeutic relationship that can move us towards deeper self-actualization. Communicating a deep sense of understanding should always precede other problem-solving interventions, right? This is a little bit like when you come home after a long day and you say, oh, work was so hard, and this, that, and the other thing, and this didn't work out, and my boss told me this, and your significant other or your best friend says, well, you know what you could do, and then starts giving you a whole bunch of ideas on how to fix the problem, and you're thinking, no, like, if I really wanted to dig deep, I could have figured out how to fix it. What I want to do is complain about it for a little bit, right? What I want to do is I want you to be with me in the emotion that I am having right this moment. And then when I'm ready to get out of it, I'll figure out the solution. I know none of you ever do that, but I know I do. And my husband and I play this dance all the time. As a matter of fact, I will say to him, hey, listen, I'm about to complain and I really don't want any solutions. I just need you to hear me. And he will zip it and just listen and be like, oh man, that was horrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Right? That is so frustrating. And then there's no suggestion. It's just that. And then when I'm ready for solutions, I'll process those solutions. So being with the person is always the most important piece. Here's the part I love about PCT is that it offers itself, it lends itself very easily to using more expressive therapies like art therapy, play therapy, because it has this genuine just empathy and non-judgment element to it. People can use creative arts to express themselves, and then oftentimes they can gain some self-awareness and insight through doing these creative arts. So I'll have people who will come in and say, well, I can't draw. All right, that's fine. Like, I'm not much of an artist myself, but if you were to draw, what color would you use? And so they can actually use expressive therapy and art therapies because there's no judgment. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to make sense. So there's a lot of ability to use these kinds of art therapy techniques. If you're interested in art therapy or play therapy, those types of things, I highly suggest that when you're done with your master's and you're in your licensing process, you look at doing some continuing education because you can get certified as an art therapist or a play therapist, and they will give you a ton of techniques to use in the therapeutic process. This is just more about the art therapy. Not a lot that I'm going to say about that, other than sometimes people just can't express how they're feeling, and using the arts can help them connect with a creative side of themselves to express emotions. Many of us have probably experienced this ourselves when we've done things like that, where we have been able to connect with a deeper part of our emotion by bypassing our thought process and really just tapping down into an emotion through some sort of art or music, that kind of thing. Okay. So this particular theoretical model, one of its biggest strengths is it has been incorporated into pretty much all other therapeutic techniques at this point. Because it is so focused on the client being the expert, it really lends itself well to diversity, because it's not about me telling you what's right and what's wrong or how to do things. It's about you figuring out within your cultural norms and value system what's right for you. So this has been translated around the world pretty much. I mean, and Rogers was the humanistic Freud, if you will, where everyone really accepts that these are really the most important pieces of therapy. Okay. So I think most of the rest of this is just a repeat of what I've already said. Limitations of person-centered therapy, right? It is the idea that there aren't a lot of techniques. And also, you know how we talked about in psychoanalytic, how it's really hard to like measure when have I had a transference reaction that was sufficient enough to make movement? Well, same thing. When have I created enough genuineness or showed enough empathy and unconditional positive regard? How much is enough? It's really hard to tell. So some of these concepts as well are not as concrete and challenging to really measure as we're looking at therapeutic change. Okay, I'll stop sharing. All right, so there's your like mini lecture for today. There's not a ton that we're gonna watch a video and look at Stan and Corey during class and talk more about the importance of this. I know the book also discusses motivational interviewing as part of PCT, so we may talk a little tiny bit about that on Thursday to talk some more, because motivational interviewing, again, is sort of rooted in this, that I'm not changing you, I'm just simply coming alongside you. So we will talk more about that. All right, I'll see you on Thursday night. Have a great week.